My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old, and the night my husband told me I wasn't classy enough to attend his company's annual gala was the night I decided to show him just how classy revenge could be. "What are you doing here? You weren't invited." My husband James hissed at me as I walked through the grand ballroom entrance of the Riverside Hotel, his face twisted in panic, eyes darting around to see who was watching. I just smiled, adjusting the diamond earrings I'd bought with his credit card that morning, and said, "I brought someone very special who's been dying to meet your colleagues." That's when I stepped aside, and his executive assistant Melissa walked up beside me, her hand resting protectively on her very pregnant belly. When James saw who was standing behind me, every drop of color drained from his face, and his mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. And that, my friends, was just the beginning. But before I tell you how we got here, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching this from, because you're about to witness the most satisfying night of my entire life. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. I'm Rachel Morrison, though I'm in the process of taking back my maiden name. I'm 38 years old, married to James Morrison for 12 years, or at least I was married to him. We have 2 beautiful children, Sophie, who's 10, and Max, who's 7. They're my entire world, and everything I did for them as much as for myself. I met James in college. I was studying communications with dreams of working in public relations, and he was an ambitious finance major who had his entire life mapped out on spreadsheets. I found that dedication attractive at the time. He knew what he wanted, and he went after it with single-minded determination. What I didn't realize until much later was that he saw people the same way he saw his career goals, as assets to be acquired and leveraged for maximum return. We got married right after graduation. I was so in love, so excited to build a life together. And for the first few years, things were good. We were a team, or so I thought. When James got his first big promotion at an investment firm, he asked me to quit my job so we could move across the country. "It's temporary," he promised. "Just until I get established, then you can restart your career." I believed him. I packed up my life, left my job, my friends, my family, and moved to a city where I knew no one. Then Sophie came along, and James suggested I stay home with her. "You're so good with her, Keen," he'd say, "and childcare is so expensive. It just makes sense, financially." Again, I agreed. I told myself I'd go back to work when she started school. Then Max was born, and the goalpost moved again. "Just a few more years," James would say. "Then you can do whatever you want." 12 years. That's how long I put my life on hold. 12 years of supporting James's career, moving 3 times for his promotions, raising our children, managing our home, and slowly, piece by piece, losing myself. I became James's wife and Sophie and Max's mom. But I stopped being Rachel. And James liked it that way, I realized later. He liked having a wife who was completely dependent on him, who had no power, no income, and no identity outside of the role he'd assigned me. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything. A beautiful home in the suburbs, healthy kids, a husband who'd just been promoted to vice president of finance at one of the most prestigious investment firms in the city. From the outside, we looked perfect. Inside, I was dying a slow death of 1,000 small cuts. It started 3 months ago when James got that VP promotion. Suddenly, he became obsessed with his appearance in ways he'd never been before. Designer suits replaced his department store clothes. He joined an expensive gym and hired a personal trainer. He started getting hair plugs to cover the thinning spot on his crown. He bought a luxury car, upgraded his watch to a Rolex, and spent more time in front of the mirror than I did. At first, I thought it was just the pressure of the new position. He was meeting with high-profile clients, sitting in board meetings, representing the company at events. Of course, he wanted to look his best. I even supported it, proud that my husband was moving up in the world. But then he turned that critical eye on me. It started with small comments. "Have you thought about getting Botox? All the women at my level do it." Or, "Maybe you should join my gym. They have great personal trainers." He'd look at my clothes with barely concealed disappointment. "Do you have to dress so suburban?" Each comment was a paper cut. Individually, they seemed small, almost caring in a twisted way. But together, they bled me dry. I started questioning everything about myself. Was I too fat? Too old? Too boring? Too unfashionable? I'd look in the mirror and see a tired woman in her late 30s who'd given up her career and her youth to raise children and support a man who was now ashamed of her. I tried to fix it. God, did I try. I bought new clothes, expensive ones I charged to our joint credit card. I joined his gym, worked out 5 days a week until my body ached. I got my hair professionally colored and styled. I lost 15 pounds. I did everything I could think of to become the woman James wanted me to be. He barely noticed. And when he did notice, the comments just shifted. That outfit is trying too hard. Or, you don't need to come to the gym when I'm there. It's my time to focus. The distance between us grew like a canyon. He stopped touching me, stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning, stopped saying he loved me. Our sex life, which had never been particularly passionate but had at least been present, disappeared completely. I'm tired, he'd say, turning away from me in bed. Work is stressful. He started working late, 4 or 5 nights a week. He'd come home after the kids were in bed, eat whatever I'd saved for him in silence, then disappear into his home office. On weekends, he had work events or golf with clients. I barely saw him, and when I did, he was distant, distracted, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. The warning signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I was too exhausted from managing everything alone to look closely. But my gut knew. Women's intuition is real, and mine was screaming that something was wrong. I started noticing little things. Text messages he'd delete immediately. Phone calls he'd take in another room. The smell of perfume on his clothes, expensive and unfamiliar. He stopped wearing his wedding ring, claiming it wasn't professional in finance. When I questioned him, he'd turn it around on me. Are you seriously this insecure? This is why I can't talk to you about work. You don't understand the corporate world. That gaslighting was almost worse than the cheating, I realized later. He made me doubt my own perceptions, my own reality. He made me feel crazy for noticing the obvious signs that he was betraying me. 3 weeks ago, everything came to a head. James announced that his company was hosting their annual gala, a black tie event at the Riverside Hotel. It was a huge deal, the kind of event where promotions were decided and careers were made. All the executives would be there with their spouses, plus major clients and members of the board of directors. I was actually excited. I thought maybe this could be a chance for us to reconnect, to remember we were partners. I'd get a beautiful dress, we'd have a date night for the first time in months, and maybe, just maybe, we could start repairing whatever had broken between us. I'll need to find a new dress, I told him, already mentally scrolling through boutiques. Something elegant. Maybe we could go shopping together this weekend. James paused too long. That's when I knew something was wrong. He set down his coffee mug and wouldn't meet my eyes. Actually, Rachel, I don't think you should come this year. The words hit me like a slap. What? Why? He shifted uncomfortably. It's a really high-profile event. Clients, board members, investors, these are important people. I need to focus on networking, on making the right impression. I've been to these events before, I said, my voice tight. I know how to network. I used to work in PR, remember? Before I gave it up for your career. That last part came out more bitter than I intended, but I was hurt. He was uninviting me to a spouse event. What kind of message did that send? James's face hardened. Rachel, let's be honest with yourself. You're a stay-at-home mom who hasn't worked in a decade. You don't understand the corporate world anymore. These women, the other wives, they're executives, lawyers, entrepreneurs, high-powered women with careers. You'd have nothing to talk about with them. Each word was a knife. I felt myself shrinking under his assessment of me, my worth, my value. I can hold a conversation, James. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were stupid. He sighed like I was being difficult, like I was the problem. Look, I'm just trying to protect you. You'd be out of your depth. You'd feel uncomfortable, and honestly, it would distract me from what I need to accomplish that night. I should have seen it then. I should have recognized the manipulation, the way he was making his betrayal seem like he was doing me a favor. But I was so beaten down, so convinced of my own inadequacy after months of his criticism, that part of me actually believed him. So, I'm just not invited? My voice came out small, defeated. And then he said the words that would ultimately seal his fate. He looked at me with something like pity mixed with contempt and said, "Rachel, be honest. You're not classy enough for this crowd. You'd embarrass yourself and me." Not classy enough. Those words echoed in my head for hours after he left for work. Not classy enough. The woman who'd given up everything for him, who'd raised his children, who'd moved across the country 3 times for his career, who'd put her own dreams on hold for over a decade, wasn't classy enough. I went to our bedroom and cried. Sobbed, really. Ugly tears that came from somewhere deep in my soul. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw exactly what James saw, a tired, frumpy housewife who'd let herself go. A woman with no career, no identity, no value beyond her ability to manage a household and raise children. A woman who wasn't classy enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake next to my husband, who was snoring peacefully, completely unbothered by the devastation he'd caused, and something shifted inside me. The hurt began to calcinate into something harder. Anger, maybe, or self-preservation, or just the final breaking point of years of emotional abuse that I'd been too blind to name. I started paying attention, really paying attention, and once I did, the truth was everywhere. James's late nights followed a pattern, every Wednesday and Friday, without fail. I checked his credit card statements, something I hadn't done in months because I trusted him to manage our finances. There were charges at expensive restaurants, the kind with candle-lit tables and romantic atmospheres, not business lunch places, but date night spots, always for 2 people, always with expensive wine. When I questioned him, he had explanations ready. Client dinner. Important meeting. You wouldn't understand, it's a finance thing. But the explanations didn't match the locations or the timing. I found receipts in his car, tucked into the glove compartment. Le Bernardin, a French restaurant known for intimate dining. 2 entrees, a bottle of champagne, chocolate soufflé for 2. The date was a Friday night when he'd told me he was at a team-building event. I noticed he showered immediately when he came home from these late nights, something he'd never done before. He'd walk in the door and head straight to the bathroom, washing away the evidence of wherever he'd been. And his clothes, they smelled wrong. Perfume, yes, but also just the scent of someone else, of intimacy, of betrayal. His phone became his most prized possession. He took it everywhere, even to the bathroom. It was always face down, always on silent, and if I got too close when he was looking at it, he'd angle the screen away or quickly close whatever he was reading. One night, about 2 weeks before the gala, I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket when I was taking his dry cleaning. He claimed it was from a conference. I checked. There was no conference that week. When I confronted him, he got angry. "Are you keeping tabs on me now? This is exactly why I need space. You're suffocating me with your insecurity." That's gaslighting, by the way, making the person who catches you lying doubt their own perception of reality, making them feel like they're the crazy one for noticing obvious red flags. And it was working. I started doubting everything, including my own sanity. But then I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to trust my gut instead of his lies. I started doing research. Simple things at first. I checked James's social media, something I rarely did because I trusted him. His Facebook was mostly professional, but there were photos from company events I didn't know about. And in almost every photo, there was a woman. Young, beautiful, blonde, standing next to James. His arm around her waist in one photo, her hand on his chest in another. They looked comfortable together, intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. I read the comments. "You two look great together," one colleague wrote. "Power couple," said another. Power couple. Not James and his coworker, James and his wife. The implication was clear to everyone but me. I clicked on her profile. Melissa Hayes, 29 years old, listed her job as executive assistant at James's company. executive assistant, to my husband. This was the woman he saw every day, the woman who organized his schedule, who traveled with him to meetings, who knew more about his life than I did. Her profile was mostly private, but what I could see made me feel sick. Photos of expensive dinners, designer handbags, luxury vacations, all posted in the last 8 months, right after James's promotion, right when he hired a new executive assistant. I should have confronted him right then, but I knew James. I knew how he'd react. He'd deny everything, twist it around, make me feel guilty for not trusting him. He'd been doing that for months. I needed proof, real, undeniable proof. That's when I made the decision to do something I never thought I'd do. I decided to check his laptop. 2 weeks before the gala, James left for one of his late work nights. I waited until I heard his car pull out of the driveway, then I went to his home office. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. Part of me didn't want to know. Ignorance is bliss, right? But the larger part of me needed to know the truth, needed to see with my own eyes what my gut had been screaming at me for months. His laptop was on his desk, still open. He'd been in a hurry to leave, hadn't bothered to close it or log out. I sat down in his chair, and there it was, right on the screen, a message notification from someone named M with a heart emoji. My hands were shaking as I clicked on it, and then I saw everything. Months of messages between James and Melissa, thousands of them. I started scrolling, unable to stop, even though each message felt like a punch to the gut. I love you. Can't wait to see you tonight. You looked so beautiful at the office today. Counting down the hours until I can kiss you again. They weren't even trying to hide it. The messages were explicit, intimate, the kind of things a husband should say to his wife. The kind of things James used to say to me back when he loved me. Or maybe he never loved me. Maybe I was always just a placeholder until someone better came along. I scrolled back further, trying to find when it started. 8 months ago, right after his promotion, right when everything changed between us. The first messages were professional, just work stuff. Then they got flirtier, then outright romantic. I watched their affair unfold in text form, saw the progression from coworkers to lovers, and I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A message from 3 days ago. Melissa. I'm pregnant, 12 weeks. We need to tell her soon. Pregnant. His mistress was pregnant with his child. I couldn't breathe. My vision went blurry with tears. 12 weeks pregnant. That meant she'd gotten pregnant right around the time James stopped touching me, stopped sleeping with me. While he was telling me he was too tired for sex, he was getting his mistress pregnant. I kept reading, numb now to the pain. James's response, not yet. After the gala, I need to secure my promotion to CFO first. They're announcing it at the event. Once that's done, I'll tell Rachel I want a divorce. Just a few more weeks, I promise. Then we can be together. A divorce. He was planning to divorce me after the gala, after he secured his promotion. I was an inconvenience to be dealt with after he got what he wanted. I scrolled further, reading messages I wish I could unread. James to Melissa. My wife is just a housewife. She has no ambition, no drive. You and I are equals. We understand each other. I'm embarrassed to be seen with her. She's gained weight and let herself go. You're everything she used to be and more. The sex is non-existent. She's too tired from doing nothing all day. I'm only staying until the gala. I need to look like a stable family man for the board. They're conservative. But after I get the CFO position, I'll tell her I want out. Melissa. I can't wait to be your wife. The one you deserve. James. You'll be the perfect corporate wife. Beautiful, successful, classy. Everything Rachel isn't. There was that word again. Classy. The word he'd used to uninvite me from the gala. Now I understood why. He couldn't have me there when he was planning to attend with his pregnant mistress. He couldn't risk me seeing them together and figuring out the truth before he was ready to leave. I read more messages. They discussed my inadequacies in detail. My appearance, my intelligence, my worth as a person. They'd laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it was to lie to me. James had told her about our fights, our private moments, our marriage, and made me the villain in every story. And the financial details made me physically ill. James had been taking money from our joint savings account, money we'd saved for Sophie and Max's college funds, $47,000 over 8 months. He'd been using our children's future to fund his affair. I saw receipts attached to messages, jewelry he'd bought Melissa, designer handbags, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, all paid for with money that should have been going toward our family. And then I found the lease agreement. James had rented an apartment for Melissa, a luxury downtown loft for $3,500 a month. He'd been paying for her to live there, furnishing it, playing house with her while I raised his children in the suburbs. I sat in that chair for an hour, reading through the entire history of their affair, watching my marriage die in real time, seeing exactly how little I meant to the man I'd given 12 years of my life to. Then I got up, walked to the bathroom, and vomited. I don't know how long I sat on the bathroom floor, crying so hard I couldn't catch my breath. Everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. My marriage was a lie. My husband's love was a lie. The future I'd imagined, growing old together, watching our children grow up, all of it was just a fantasy I'd been living while James planned his exit strategy. But then something shifted. The grief transformed into something else, something cold and hard and focused. Rage, pure, righteous rage at what he'd done, at how he'd betrayed me, used me, discarded me like I was nothing, at how he'd stolen from our children to fund his affair, at how he'd gaslit me, made me doubt myself, convinced me I was the problem when all along he was the one destroying our family. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were red and swollen from crying. My face was blotchy. I looked exactly like the pathetic housewife James had described in his messages, and something inside me snapped. "No," I said out loud to my reflection. "Not like this. He doesn't get to do this to me." I got up, washed my face, and went back to that laptop. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every receipt, every cruel word they'd said about me. I forwarded them all to my personal email address. Then I cleared the message history so James wouldn't know I'd seen anything. I looked at the calendar. 10 days until the gala. 10 days until James planned to secure his promotion and then discard me like trash. I smiled for the first time in hours. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who just realized she wasn't a victim. She was a warrior, and she was about to go to war. James wanted classy? I'd show him classy. He wanted the gala to be his triumphant moment. I'd make it unforgettable, just not in the way he expected. Over the next few days, I planned. I had to be smart about this. James was clever, manipulative. He'd been lying to me for months, and I hadn't caught on. If I confronted him directly, he'd deny everything, twist it around, maybe even hide the evidence. I needed something that couldn't be denied, couldn't be explained away, couldn't be turned back on me. I needed to expose him publicly, completely, with no room for his usual manipulation. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. I used money from my personal emergency fund, money my mother had given me years ago that I'd kept separate from our joint accounts. I found Maurice, a former cop turned PI with great reviews. We met at a coffee shop and I laid out everything. The messages, the affair, the pregnancy, the financial theft. Maurice listened, took notes, and when I was done, he leaned back and said, "Classic narcissist pattern. He's been grooming you for years, breaking down your self-esteem so you'd be easier to control and eventually discard." Hearing it put that way, so clinical and clear, made something click. This wasn't my fault. I hadn't driven him to cheat by gaining weight or being boring or any of the things he'd told me. This was who James was, a man who saw people as objects to use and discard when they no longer served his purpose. Maurice followed James for a week. The photos and documentation he brought back confirmed everything and added even more damning details. James wasn't just seeing Melissa. He'd been living a complete double life. Every Wednesday and Friday evening, he went to Melissa's apartment and stayed until 11. They had dinner together, watched TV like a normal couple, slept together. He was playing house with her while maintaining the facade of our marriage for professional reasons. The weekend, I thought he was at a team-building retreat. He and Melissa went to the Hamptons. Maurice had photos of them walking on the beach, having romantic dinners, shopping together. In one photo, James was buying Melissa maternity clothes, his hand on her belly, looking at her with tenderness he hadn't shown me in years. Maurice also discovered James's pattern. This wasn't his first affair. 3 years ago, there was an intern. The company had quietly paid her $50,000 to go away and sign an NDA. James had cheated before, gotten caught, and his company had covered it up to avoid scandal. Maurice found the paperwork in corporate records. My husband was a serial cheater who'd been enabled by his company's desire to protect their investment in him. And I'd been completely clueless, raising his children and supporting his career while he betrayed me over and over. But Maurice's most important discovery was the truth about Melissa. James had been lying to her too. Through some careful surveillance and a few strategic questions to people who knew Melissa, Maurice learned that James had told her he was separated from me, that we were living separate lives but staying together for appearances, that I was crazy and controlling, and that he was planning to divorce me as soon as it was professionally convenient. Melissa thought she was in a relationship with a man who was leaving his wife. She didn't know we still shared a bed, still had family dinners, still appeared as a happy couple to everyone who knew us. She was being played just like I was, and that gave me an idea, a risky, potentially explosive idea, but one that felt right. What if Melissa and I joined forces? I know. The wife and the mistress teaming up sounds like a TV plot. But think about it. James had lied to both of us, used both of us, made promises to both of us he had no intention of keeping. Melissa thought she was getting a husband and a father for her baby, but I'd read James's messages to his college friend. He was already planning his next move, already eyeing his next conquest. Melissa would be just like me in a few years, a used-up single mother he'd discard when someone younger came along. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I reached out to the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. I created an anonymous email account and sent her a message. The subject line was simple: "You deserve to know the truth about James." I attached screenshots, lots of them, messages between James and me from the same days he was telling her he loved her, photos from our family vacation 2 months ago, all of us smiling at the camera like the perfect family, recent pictures of James kissing me goodbye in the morning, video from last week of James helping Max with his homework, being the loving father, and I attached the most damning evidence of all, messages between James and his college buddy where he talked about Melissa. She's hot and the sex is great, but she's getting too clingy, already talking about marriage. I'll probably have to find a new assistant after the baby comes. I ended the email with, "He's lying to both of us. We should talk. Rachel." 2 hours later, I got a response. "This is fake. James is separated. He told me." I replied with a video I'd taken that morning. James and me in our kitchen, him kissing me goodbye, saying "love you, honey," before heading to work. Timestamp from that very day, then silence for an hour. Then, "Why are you telling me this?" My response, "Because you're pregnant with a liar's child. Because he's using both of us. Because you deserve to know who you're really dealing with. And because I'm done being played." Another silence. Then, "Can we meet?" We met the next day at a coffee shop on the other side of town, somewhere neither of us would run into anyone we knew. I got there early, my stomach in knots. I didn't know what to expect. Would she be angry at me? Defensive of James? Refuse to believe me? Melissa walked in at exactly 2 p.m. She was beautiful. I had to admit that. Tall, blonde, with the kind of polished look that comes from spending money on appearance. Her baby bump was just starting to show under her dress. She looked young and scared and defiant all at once. We sat down across from each other, two women who should have been enemies but were really just two victims of the same man. "Show me everything," she said without preamble. So I did. I pulled out my laptop and showed her the truth. Bank statements showing James and I had joint accounts. The mortgage with both our names on it. Sophie and Max's birth certificates with James listed as father. Our wedding album. Recent family photos, text messages between James and me from the same times he was messaging her. And then the worst part, the messages where James talked about her to his friend, where he called her clingy and said he'd probably dump her after the baby came, where he talked about his next conquest. A new analyst at the firm who was even hotter than Melissa. I watched her face as she read through everything, watched the denial crumble, watched reality sink in, watched her realize she'd been played just like I had. "He told me you were separated," she whispered, her hand protectively on her belly. "He said you guys hadn't been intimate in over a year, that you were only together for appearances." "We share a bed," I said quietly. "We have family dinners every night. We went on a family vacation 2 months ago. I had no idea he was unhappy until he started criticizing everything about me." Melissa started crying. "I quit grad school for him. I was getting my MBA, but he said he needed an assistant he could trust, and it would be good experience. So I left school, took this job, moved to a new city." She looked up at me with devastated eyes. "I gave up everything because I thought we had a future." I reached across the table and handed her a napkin. "I know the feeling. I gave up my career 12 years ago. I've moved 3 times for his promotions. I've raised his children. And he told me I wasn't classy enough to attend his work event." We sat in silence for a moment, 2 women who should have hated each other but were really just casualties of the same narcissist. "What do we do?" Melissa finally asked. I leaned forward. "The company gala is in 6 days. James specifically uninvited me, said I'd embarrass him in front of his colleagues. I want to attend, and I want you to come with me." Her eyes widened. "You want us both to show up?" "I want to expose him," I said. "Publicly, in front of everyone he's been trying to impress. I want his boss, his colleagues, his clients to see exactly who he is. A liar, a cheater, a thief who stole from his own children to fund an affair." Melissa sat back, processing. "That would destroy his career." "Good," I said flatly. "He deserves it." She was quiet for a long time, then, "He's never going to leave you, is he? This whole time, I thought I was waiting for him to file for divorce, but he's not going to do it." "He's using the pregnancy to string you along," I confirmed. "He'll tell you the timing isn't right, that he needs to wait for his next promotion, that the baby needs to be born first. He'll find excuse after excuse, and eventually, he'll pressure you to give the baby up, or he'll just disappear from your life entirely." Melissa put her head in her hands. "I'm 12 weeks pregnant with a married man's baby. I look like a homewrecker. I'm going to lose my job. This is a nightmare." "You're not the homewrecker," I said firmly. "James is. He lied to you just like he lied to me. You're a victim here, too." She looked up at me. "Why aren't you angry at me?" "Oh, I am angry," I admitted. "I'm furious, but not at you, at him. He's the one who made vows to me. He's the one with children at home. He's the one who should have been faithful. You didn't owe me anything. He did." Melissa wiped her eyes. "What happens after the gala? After we expose him?" "He'll be fired, probably," I said. "And I'll divorce him. You'll have a baby to raise. We'll both have to rebuild our lives, but at least we'll be free of his lies." She thought about it for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders, and I saw steel enter her eyes. "I'm in. Let's burn his life to the ground." And just like that, the wife and the mistress became allies. Over the next 5 days, we planned every detail. I bought tickets to the gala. They were available for purchase to spouses and guests. I got one for me and one for Melissa. We coordinated our arrival time, our entrance, what we'd say, what evidence we'd present. I bought a dress, the most expensive, most beautiful dress I could find. Midnight blue designer gown that fit like it was made for me. Elegant and sophisticated and absolutely stunning. I charged it to James's credit card, $4,200, worth every penny. I made appointments for hair, makeup, nails. I was going to look incredible. If James wanted classy, I'd show him classy. I'd walk into that ballroom looking like a woman who knew her worth, not the dowdy housewife he'd convinced me I was. Melissa bought a maternity dress, also elegant, also expensive. Also charged to James's card. We figured if we were going to destroy his life, we might as well look good doing it. We prepared evidence packets, printed screenshots of messages, photos, bank statements, everything. We made copies for James's boss, for HR, for anyone who needed to see the truth, and we practiced. We stood in front of my mirror and practiced what we'd say, how we'd say it, how we'd handle James's inevitable denials and deflections. We needed to be calm, confident, unshakable. We needed to be united. The day before the gala, James called me from work. "Just wanted to check in," he said, his voice warm in a way it hadn't been in months. "Make sure you're okay with everything. I know you were disappointed about not coming to the gala." The audacity of it made my blood boil. He was checking to make sure I was still fooled, still obedient, still under his control. "I understand," I said, keeping my voice sweet. "You're right, it's important for your career. I'll stay home with the kids." "You're the best, Rach," he said. "I really appreciate your support. This promotion means everything to me." "I bet it does," I thought. "Too bad you're not going to get it." "I love you," he said before hanging up, the lie rolling off his tongue so easily. "Love you too," I replied, my own lie just as smooth. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over the plan, checking for flaws, making sure we had everything we needed. Part of me was terrified. What if this backfired? What if James managed to talk his way out of it? What if people took his side? But the larger part of me was filled with cold determination. This man had destroyed my self-worth, stolen my future, betrayed me in every way possible. He'd made me feel small and worthless and not enough. And I was done being small. The morning of the gala, I got up early. James was still sleeping, exhausted from his late night with Melissa, though he'd told me he was working. I looked at him, lying there, this man I'd loved for 12 years, and felt nothing but contempt. I got dressed quietly and left for my hair appointment. I spent hours getting ready, and with each step, I felt stronger. The hairstylist put my hair up in an elegant updo. The makeup artist gave me a flawless, sophisticated look. I put on my grandmother's diamond earrings, a family heirloom that had been passed down for generations. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. I looked powerful, beautiful, nothing like the frumpy housewife James had described. I looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. Melissa and I met at a hotel room near the venue at 7:30. She looked beautiful too, her baby bump elegant under her dress. We looked at each other and nodded. We were ready. "Thank you for doing this," I said. "Thank you for showing me the truth," she replied. "I would have wasted years waiting for a man who was never going to leave." We reviewed the plan one final time. I'd enter first through the main doors, make sure James saw me. Then Melissa would enter 30 seconds later and stand beside me. Maximum impact, all eyes on us. At 8 p.m., we drove to the Riverside Hotel. It was a gorgeous venue, exactly the kind of place James would have wanted for his big night. Valet parking, red carpet, crystal chandeliers visible through the windows, string quartet playing classical music, ice sculptures. The company had spared no expense. Through the windows, I could see James in the center of the ballroom, laughing with colleagues, holding a champagne flute, playing the role of the successful executive. He looked so confident, so secure. He had no idea his world was about to implode. "Ready?" Melissa asked. I took a deep breath. "Ready." We walked up to the entrance. I could feel my heart pounding, adrenaline flooding my system. This was it. No going back. I pushed open the ballroom doors and walked in. The room was stunning. 300 guests in black tie attire, crystal chandeliers casting soft light, white roses everywhere. The air smelled of expensive perfume and success. Everyone looked elegant, powerful, exactly the kind of people James wanted to impress. Heads started turning as I walked in. I heard whispers. "Is that James Morrison's wife? I thought he said she couldn't come." People were noticing, confused, curious. James was mid-conversation with the CEO, explaining something with animated hands. Then he saw me. I watched his face change in real time. Confusion, shock, then pure panic. His champagne glass slipped, nearly fell. He caught it at the last second, but liquid sloshed over his hand. He excused himself from the CEO and rushed toward me, weaving through guests. His face was red, his eyes wide. When he reached me, he grabbed my arm and pulled me aside, speaking in a low, urgent hiss. "What are you doing here? You weren't invited." I removed his hand from my arm calmly, deliberately. I looked him straight in the eye and smiled. Then I spoke loudly enough for the people around us to hear. "I wasn't invited? That's interesting, James. I thought wives were always invited to company events." His eyes darted around, seeing who was listening, who was watching. "Rachel, don't do this." "Not here. Please." "Do what?" I said innocently. "Attend my husband's work party? Support your career like I've been doing for 12 years? That's when Melissa walked through the doors. She stood there for a moment, framed in the entrance, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. Then she walked straight toward us. I stepped aside slightly as she approached and stood next to me. We looked at James together. Two women he'd betrayed, united. The color drained from his face completely. "What? Melissa? Why?" People around us were definitely watching now. Conversations had stopped. Phones were coming out. This was about to become a spectacle. I kept my voice clear and projected so people nearby could hear. "I brought someone very special who's been dying to meet your colleagues." I gestured to Melissa. "Everyone, this is Melissa Hayes, James's executive assistant and the mother of his child." Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. Melissa placed her hand more prominently on her belly, making the baby bump obvious. Women covered their mouths in shock. Men looked uncomfortable. James tried to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, mouth opening and closing, face going from white to red and back again. The CEO heard the commotion and turned around. He started walking toward us, other executives following. They formed a circle around us, James trapped in the center. "Someone want to tell me what's going on here?" the CEO asked, his voice sharp. James found his voice. "Sir, I can explain. These women they're lying?" I cut him off. I pulled out my phone. "Should I show everyone the text messages where you tell Melissa you love her while telling me the same thing? Or maybe the bank statements showing you stole $47,000 from our children's college fund to pay for your mistress's apartment?" James lunged for my phone. "Give me that!" Security guards appeared immediately, stepping between James and me. The CEO held up his hand. "Nobody touch anyone. Mrs. Morrison, what exactly are you claiming?" I handed him an envelope I'd prepared. "Everything you need to know is in here, sir. Screenshots of messages between my husband and his assistant, photos of them together, financial records showing company credit card used for personal expenses during work hours, lease agreement for an apartment James rented for her, which he approved as her supervisor, which is a massive conflict of interest." The CEO opened the envelope and started reading. His face grew darker with each page. Other executives crowded around, reading over his shoulder. Melissa spoke up, her voice shaking but determined. "I'm 12 weeks pregnant with James's baby. He told me he was separated from his wife. He told me they were getting divorced. He promised to marry me." She looked at James with eyes full of hurt and anger. "You lied to me." James's panic was palpable. "This is insane. You're both insane." "Sir, I can explain." "Explain what?" I said coldly. "Explain how you've been having an affair with your subordinate for 8 months, using company time and resources, stealing from your own family? What exactly are you going to explain, James?" By now, we had an audience of at least 50 people, all watching in stunned silence. Phones were out, recording. Someone was definitely live streaming this. James's public humiliation was being documented in real time. The CEO looked up from the papers, his face hard. "James, is any of this true?" James tried one more deflection. "Melissa got pregnant on purpose, trying to trap me. Rachel is just jealous and trying to ruin my career. This is a conspiracy." Melissa cut him off. "Trap you? You said you loved me. You said we'd be a family. You said you were leaving her." She pulled out her own phone. "Want to hear the voice messages you left me? The ones where you called your wife dead weight? Where you said she was pathetic?" She played the recording. James's voice came through clear as day. Rachel's pathetic. Just a housewife with no ambition. She let herself go completely. I'm ashamed to be seen with her. You're everything she'll never be. Smart, beautiful, successful. I can't wait to be rid of her and start our real life together. The silence after that recording was deafening. Every person in that room had heard James's cruelty, his contempt for his wife, his casual betrayal. Women in the crowd looked disgusted. Several put supportive hands on my shoulders. The CEO's jaw was tight. Give me your badge, James. You're suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. And if even half of what these women are saying is true, you're fired and will be pursuing legal action for misuse of company funds. Sir, please! James was begging now, all pretense of dignity gone. I can explain everything. These women are conspiring against me. No, James, the CEO said coldly. You did this to yourself. Security, escort Mr. Morrison out. But I wasn't done. I had one more piece of evidence to share. There's something else everyone should know. I pulled out more papers and handed them to the nearest executive. This isn't James's first affair at this company. 3 years ago, he had a relationship with an intern named Emma Chen. The company paid her $50,000 to sign an NDA and go away quietly. I found the settlement agreement in his files. The CEO's face turned purple. What? My husband has been using his position to prey on subordinates for years, I continued. Melissa is just the latest victim. Before her, there was Emma. Before that, I suspect there were others. He's a serial predator hiding behind a wedding ring and a corporate title. Melissa looked shocked. There were others? I nodded at her. We're just the ones who found out. The room erupted in whispers. The executives were having urgent conversations. The HR director was already on her phone, presumably calling legal. James's carefully constructed life was crumbling around him. James tried to rush toward me, but security held him back. You bitch, he screamed, all control gone. You've ruined me. Everything I worked for. No, I said, stepping closer. My voice was ice cold, every word deliberate. You ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Security started escorting James toward the exit. He was struggling against them, still screaming. You'll regret this, Rachel. You'll never survive without me. Who's going to take care of you? I smiled, surrounded by supportive colleagues and strangers who just witnessed his complete destruction. I'll take care of myself, just like I've been doing for 12 years while you took all the credit. The difference is, now I'm free. They dragged him out, still yelling threats and accusations. The doors closed behind him, and suddenly the ballroom fell silent. Then someone started clapping. A woman in her 50s, one of the senior vice presidents. Others joined in. Soon half the room was applauding. Women especially, women who saw their own struggles reflected in mine. Women who'd been diminished by men like James. Women who were cheering for the one who fought back. The CEO approached me and Melissa. Mrs. Morrison, Ms. Hayes, I apologize on behalf of the company. This should never have happened. We take workplace ethics and appropriate relationships seriously, or at least we should. James will be terminated, and will ensure any financial fraud is properly addressed. He handed me his business card. Our legal team will be reaching out to help you with your divorce proceedings, and Ms. Hayes will also help ensure you receive appropriate support. Other women started coming up to us. Executives, wives of executives, all offering support. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen, one woman said. We always suspected something was wrong with him, said another. A woman handed me her card. I'm a divorce attorney. Call me Monday. First consultation is free. Another card. I run a women's career re-entry program. When you're ready to get back to work, call me. The kindness was overwhelming. I'd been so afraid of being judged, of being seen as the bitter wife causing a scene. Instead, I was being celebrated for having the courage to expose the truth. Melissa turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. You saved me from wasting years on a man who would have destroyed me. I hugged her. He victimized both of us. But we're not victims anymore. We're survivors, and we're going to be okay. What will you do? She asked. About the baby? Keep it, she said firmly. Raise it myself, but not as James Morrison's wife, as my own person, as someone who's strong enough to build a life without a man who lies. You are strong enough, I told her, stronger than you know. I noticed something then. The wedding ring James had taken off months ago, claiming it wasn't professional. It was on the floor where he'd dropped it in his panic. I picked it up, walked to the nearby champagne fountain, and dropped it in, watched it sink into the bubbling liquid. To new beginnings, I said, raising an empty hand in a toast. Women around me cheered. The gala continued, believe it or not. With the drama resolved and James gone, people actually seemed to enjoy themselves more. They could relax, be authentic. And I, surprisingly, became the center of positive attention. People wanted to hear my story, offer support, share their own experiences with toxic partners. I networked more that night than James probably ever had. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd said I wasn't classy enough, wouldn't fit in with these people. But I fit in just fine. Better than he did, actually, because I had something he never had, integrity. Around 11 p.m., Melissa and I left together. We'd gone in as adversaries and were leaving as allies, maybe even friends. People hugged us goodbye, pressed business cards into our hands, made us promise to stay in touch. Thank you for tonight, Melissa said as the valet brought our cars. Thank you for being brave enough to stand up with me, I replied. We hugged one more time, then drove off in separate directions, both toward uncertain futures, but futures that were ours to control. The drive home was surreal. I kept replaying the night in my head, the look on James's face when he saw me, the moment Melissa revealed her pregnancy, James being escorted out by security. It was everything I'd planned and more. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Relief, victory, disbelief, it all bubbled up and came out as laughter. I'd actually done it. I'd exposed him in front of everyone who mattered to him, and instead of being punished for it, I'd been supported, celebrated even. When I got home, the house was empty. The kids were at my mother's for the weekend. I walked through the rooms I'd lived in for 5 years, seeing everything differently now. This wasn't James's house that I just lived in. This was my house, too. My name was on the deed. I'd made this a home. It was mine. I took off the expensive dress, removed my makeup, let my hair down, looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face as this morning, but different eyes, stronger eyes, eyes that had seen the worst and survived. My phone was blowing up with messages. The confrontation had been recorded and shared online. Wife exposes cheating husband at work gala was already going viral. Over 2 million views in just a few hours. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. She's my hero. This is how you handle trash. The way she stayed calm and powerful. Every woman should see this. James tried to call me 47 times that night. Each call went to voicemail. His text messages became increasingly desperate. Rachel, please, let me explain. It's not what it looked like. I love you, not her. This will destroy our family. Think of the kids. I blocked his number. Then I called a locksmith for an emergency appointment. Paid extra to have the locks changed that night. James had left his keys at the venue in his panic. He wasn't getting back in. This was my house now. The next morning, I picked up Sophie and Max from my mother's. They ran to me with hugs, oblivious to how their world had changed overnight. "Where's Daddy?" Sophie asked. I knelt down to her level. Daddy made some bad choices that hurt Mommy's feelings, so Daddy is going to live somewhere else for a while. Max's eyes went wide. Is it because of us? My heart broke. No, baby. Never because of you. Daddy loves you both very much. This is between the grown-ups. It has nothing to do with you. Sophie, wise beyond her 10 years, looked at me carefully. Are you okay, Mom? I hugged them both tight. I'm going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. And I meant it. The week after the gala was a whirlwind. Monday, I had divorce papers served to James at the hotel where he was staying. Tuesday, I froze all our joint accounts. Wednesday, I met with that divorce attorney who'd given me her card. Thursday, I filed a restraining order after James showed up at the house screaming and pounding on the door. Friday, I had my first therapy appointment. Each day, I felt stronger. Each day, I felt more like myself. The woman I used to be before James convinced me I was worthless. My support system emerged from unexpected places. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out, saying they'd always known James was controlling me but hadn't known how to help. My church community rallied around me, bringing meals, offering babysitting, providing shoulders to cry on. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. James had just isolated me, made me think I needed only him. But I had a whole community of people who cared about me. James faced serious consequences. He was officially fired from his company with a formal announcement. The company launched an investigation into his financial misconduct and found even more issues than I'd uncovered. He was escorted from the building with a box of his belongings, his access revoked, his reputation destroyed. Word spread through the finance industry. His LinkedIn profile was deleted. No one would hire him after what he'd done. The gossip network in that world is tight, and everyone knew he was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. Melissa filed a paternity suit. James would have to support 2 families now on much less income. His luxury lifestyle was over. 3 months later, I was a different person. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. My attorney was ruthless, and I was getting everything I deserved. The house, primary custody of the kids, significant alimony, and half of his remaining assets. I'd lost the weight I'd gained, not for James, but for me. I started running again, something I'd loved in college but had given up. I joined a book club and made new friends. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women escape abusive relationships. And that executive who'd given me her card? She kept her promise. She got me an interview at a prestigious PR firm. They didn't care about my 10-year gap in employment. They valued my experience, my skills, my resilience. I started part-time while the kids were in school. My first paycheck in 10 years made me cry. It was my money. Money I'd earned. Independence in physical form. The kids were thriving. Sophie told me one day, "Mom, you seem happier now." Max said, "We laugh more." Therapy was helping them process the changes, and we were spending more quality time together. I was a better mother without James's criticism and control. Melissa had her baby, a beautiful girl. James was on the birth certificate, but barely involved. He paid court-ordered child support, but nothing more. Melissa and I stayed in touch, unlikely friends bonded by shared trauma. She was succeeding as a single mom, strong and independent. I started a blog about my experience. From housewife to whole life, I called it. Thousands of women followed it, sharing their own stories of toxic relationships and finding the courage to leave. I turned my pain into purpose, helping others escape the same manipulation I'd endured. 6 months after the gala, my divorce was finalized. I kept my married name for the kids' sake, but I felt reborn. I sold my wedding ring and donated the money to the women's shelter. I cleaned out all of James's remaining belongings and either donated or trashed them. I redecorated the house in my style, bright and colorful and joyful, everything he'd hated. I learned to like myself again. Without James's constant criticism, without his impossible standards, I could just be me. And I was enough. I'd always been enough. I just needed to believe it. The wisdom I gained through this experience changed me fundamentally. I learned that classy isn't about designer clothes or corporate credentials or perfect appearance. Classy is how you handle crisis with dignity, how you protect your children, how you stand up for yourself, how you help other women facing similar struggles. That's real class. My daughter Sophie told me recently, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you." Those words meant more than anything James ever said to me. I'm modeling strength for my daughter, teaching my son to respect women, showing both of them that you can survive anything. So that's my story. The night my husband said I wasn't classy enough for his work event, and I showed him what real class looks like. Class isn't about appearances, credentials, or social status. Class is about integrity, about standing up when someone tries to tear you down, about protecting not just yourself, but other women from the same harm. I won't lie to you. The aftermath was hard. Divorce is painful even when it's necessary. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days I doubted everything. But you know what? I survived. More than that, I thrived. My children are happier. I'm happier. I'm building a career again. I'm helping other women escape toxic relationships. James thought he was trading up, from a tired housewife to a young, exciting mistress. But the truth is, he was never worthy of either of us. He was a man who built his life on lies and expected women to hold up that house of cards while he took all the credit. The biggest lie he told me wasn't about Melissa. It wasn't even about loving me. The biggest lie was that I needed him, that I was nothing without him, that my worth came from being his wife. I believed that lie for too long, but that night at the gala, standing in my designer dress with Melissa beside me, watching James's world crumble, I realized the truth. I was always strong enough. I was always smart enough. I was always classy enough. I just needed to remember it. To every woman watching this, if you're in a relationship where someone makes you feel small, that's not love. If your partner criticizes your appearance, your intelligence, your worth, that's abuse. If you've given up your dreams to support theirs and received only contempt in return, you deserve better. You don't need permission to leave. You don't need to wait until they change because they won't. You don't need to prove you're worthy. You already are. And if you're scared to stand up, remember this, I was scared too. I shook putting on that dress. My hands trembled walking into that ballroom. But I did it anyway. And you can too. Sometimes love means protecting yourself. Sometimes courage means exposing the truth. And sometimes the classiest thing you can do is refuse to accept disrespect. How would your life change if you stopped believing the lies someone else told you about yourself? What would you do if you remembered your own worth? Think about it. If you have a story like mine, share it in the comments. Let's support each other. Let's show the world that women who've been torn down can rise up stronger than ever. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you'd do in this situation. Subscribe for more stories of women who refuse to stay silent. Remember, you are enough. You always have been. To everyone who stood by me, who supported me, who helped me remember my worth, thank you. And to James, wherever you are, I hope you've learned that class can't be faked, integrity can't be bought, and some women refuse to be broken. This is Rachel, and I'm just getting started.